What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another BioLayne video log. I'm not going to go into it's been a while since we've done this because I do that every time, so we're going to get right into it. I want to talk about training today, and actually I think the next few video logs will continue on a similar path. I've gotten some inspiration because I've been hanging out with Ben Escrow, Ryan Doris, Dr. Mike Zordos, and then this past weekend obviously at the USAPL meet. I got to hang around a lot of people. We were talking about training and volume and periodization and all these different things. So I want to emphasize very upfront, I do not consider myself a training expert. My PhD is in nutritional science. I took a lot of advanced exercise physiology courses as electives in my graduate school, but unless you've actually done research in that area, I don't think it's appropriate to consider yourself an expert. So I do not consider myself a training expert. I hang around with a lot of training experts. I consider Ben Escrow a training expert. I consider Dr. Mike Zordos a training expert. And really all the stuff I'm going to talk about is, as Ben says, it's Dr. Zordos' playground. I just play in the sandbox. So, but I've implemented a lot of these things in my training, made a huge difference. People were asking how I prepared for USAPL Nationals because I did very well. I think I tied their American squat record or something of that nature, which for a guy who was always terrible at squats growing up, felt pretty good. So today I want to talk about training volume, and people misunderstand this term, and I want to talk about it in terms of the context of hierarchy of what's important, and I'll get into that, but also how it causes adaptations. Now, when we're looking to make improvements in strength or hypertrophy, okay, we want to first determine, all right, what are the major determining factors of hypertrophy, okay? We have a lot of things that affect hypertrophy, time under tension, which actually ties into volume, metabolic byproduct accumulation, or I think metabolic stress is what they also call it. So like lactic acid buildup, those sorts of things, accumulation of byproducts, autocrine factors like IGF-1, MGF, muscle damage, and volume. But we want to also understand what are the major determining factors. And actually, if you look at the research, the major determining factor of hypertrophy and strength is not damage, not metabolic stress, not intensity, it's volume. Okay? Now, that's not to say that all those other things don't have an impact. Okay? You don't want to misunderstand what I'm saying. Okay? All those things do have an impact. But volume is the most important thing, okay? So if we look at our hierarchy of what's important, and you have to understand, so volume is up here, and then all these other things go down, all right? So it's okay to construct training protocols to take advantage of things down here as long as they don't sabotage what's up here. Okay, you have to understand that training is cumulative, okay? I want you to understand that. Training is cumulative. Alright? So it's not just about that set you took to failure or your heaviest set or anything like that. All the training you do is cumulative. Now some people will say, well, so what is volume? Okay, volume is quite simply amount of weight times the number of reps times the number of sets. Okay? So if you do 300 pounds on squat for 10 sets of 10, okay, that would be 30,000 pounds of volume. All right, it's a lot of volume. So so it's just very simply weight times reps times sets. Okay, and so if you understand that training is cumulative, this stuff starts to make sense. So people have looked at. I mean, the research seems to be very clear in terms of, like, for example, single set versus multi-set. You can cherry pick studies that show that there's not that much difference between single or multi-set, but there's a lot of problems with that research. A lot of times they don't equate for volume. okay? So when you look at, they don't account for volume. When you look at multi-set versus single set, more volume almost always produces better results. In the consensus of the data, volume is most important. If you're an anti-volume zealot, please stop watching this video, because you and I can't have a conversation if you don't value evidence. All right, the evidence out there overwhelmingly shows that volume is a major determining factor of hypertrophy. Okay, so now that we've established that, we need to talk about appropriate progression, because people will listen to what I've just said and they'll go, okay, I'm going to go out and do 100 sets of squats. No. First off, I wouldn't say it's been proven. Well, you can't prove anything in science, but it's not even wildly supported. But we had this hypothesis, much like there was an anabolic cap to a meal. Okay, if you eat 40 grams of protein, eating 80 grams is not going to give you more hypertrophy. Okay, or more protein synthesis. Same thing with training volume. Okay, once you reach a training volume threshold, and we don't know where that is, just doing more volume in that session probably isn't going to necessarily give you more growth. So there are benefits to increasing your frequency to improve volume. Okay? Now, we need to talk about appropriate progression. For example, I'll just use squats. If you've been squatting one time a week and your training volume is at 5,000 pounds, should you go up to 4 times a week squatting for 50,000 pounds of total volume? No, absolutely not. Okay, it has to be an appropriate progression. All right, maybe if you've been squatting one time a week at 5,000 pounds of total volume, you go to twice a week and move your total volume up to 6,500 or 7,000 pounds. Okay, so you've actually reduced your amount of volume per session, but you've increased the total volume during the week. All right, that is an appropriate progression. Okay, people will say, well, Layne, how high can you get? Well, if you want to talk about somebody who's extreme, Dr. Zordos, there was a time when I think he squatted consecutively for over 100 days, and put quite a bit of strength on his squat, and his quads grew. If anybody, Mike always jokes that he's going to start the new bodybuilding federation where you have to wear a singlet, it's quads only, and there's no shaving or tanning allowed. So, Mike, let me know when you start that, because I'll stay away. So, appropriate volume progression, just like we talk about when we talk about dieting down. Okay, if you were going to diet down, should we just start you out? You may have to get down to, say, 2,000 or 1,500 calories per day, but are we going to start you there? No, absolutely not. We're going to start you off at the minimum calorie deficit we need in order to drop the appropriate amount of fat. Okay? And then if you have to get more aggressive from there, we're going to do that. Same thing with volume. You should use the minimum amount of volume you can to make progress, and then when that progress stagnates, then you add volume. Okay? And you want to see your volume going steadily up over time. If you're not tracking your volume, it's just the same as people say, well, I eat clean. Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, fine. But what are your protein, carb, fat intake? Well, I eat clean. Okay, there's nothing objective to go from. You don't know what you're actually doing. Okay, you don't have an objective measure of your progress. You can't say, oh, I'm adding in calories, or I've increased my protein or my carbs, or I've decreased them, because you don't know. It's the same thing with training volume. If you're not tracking your training volume, you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. You have no idea if you're making progress in terms of your overall overload. Okay? In order to keep improving, you have to keep increasing overload on the muscle. All right? Now that can be accomplished by getting stronger and using more weight, but you can only get stronger for a certain amount of time, and at a certain point, strength, even for me who I'm getting stronger, but my strength progression might be putting on 10, 20 pounds on my squat in a full year of training. Am I really increasing my overload that much through that small amount of strength increase? And the answer is probably not. Okay? But I could always add more volume. Now, people kind of get into this thing about failure. Okay? They'll say, well, you know, if I use too much volume, you know, my failure sets are less. I want to be very specific. I wrote a review a while back with Dr. Gabe Wilson, Training to Failure, and it was in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning. A failure is a tool, okay? It can be a useful tool, but if you use failure inappropriately, it will actually sabotage your total training volume, okay? Let's think about this for a second. Let's say I'm squatting 3 times a week, okay, which is what I'm doing right now, okay? If I do a super damaging, you know, crazy drop set to failure workout, do I induce a lot of adaptation and possibly hypertrophy in that one workout? Well, maybe actually going to failure that one time was better than if I didn't go to failure whatsoever, okay? But what happens the next training session? I'm sore, I'm tired, I can't complete the training volume that I have set out. My training volume is lowered, and now I've sabotaged the most important thing for something down here on my hierarchy, okay? So when you train to failure, it has to be implemented correctly. And let me show you an example of that. I want to show you an example of, yes, that's right, the BioLayne wipe-off board. Training to failure and its effects on volume. Okay, this is an experiment I've actually done with myself. And many of you, this will probably ring true. Okay, so let's look at when we use failure as the goal. Okay, when we use failure as the goal, let me get, I always have trouble lining this up. We use failure as the goal. Let's look at if we worked up to a 1-set all-out failure. Okay, 4 total sets, but the first set's going to be the all-out failure. So I've done this with myself. All right, 565 on squat, got 7 reps. Pretty good. Pretty good. That's pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. The second set, I got 3 reps. Okay, and those were sloppy as hell. All right. Third set, I got 2 reps. Those were also sloppy as hell. Okay. And the fourth set, I got a single rep, very sloppy, like a 1-rep max. Why? Because this set took so much out of me. Okay? It took so much out of me that my subsequent sets were crap. Alright? Now let's look at my total training volume. Alright? So we had 13 total reps throughout that entire workout. So we got 7,345 pounds of training volume from that workout, from the working sets. Okay? Cool. Alright. Well, that's a decent training volume. Now let's look at when actually failure is properly implemented and volume is the goal. Okay? So what I did here was I said, okay, I'm not going to go to failure on my first set. I'm going to do 3 sets of 3 reps with 565. Okay? And then my 4th set is going to go to failure, called plus set. Okay? So what did I do? Okay, well these were very clean reps. Okay? My form was good, or as over here they were not. Okay? My form was good, everything was tight, I felt good. 3 sets of 3, no problem. 4th set, I got 6 reps. Okay, that set to failure, I got 6 reps. So yes, did those sets affect me? Yeah, a little bit. I didn't get 7 reps, but I got 6, and with better form. Okay, but look at my total training volume. Okay, I got 15 total reps in that workout, so it was 8,475 pounds of total volume. That's a 15.4% increase in volume for that workout. Okay, so. What's the point? Well, the point is, I got the benefits of getting all my volume in, but I also got the benefits of failure, okay? Because going to failure does have some benefits, all right? But I properly implemented it, okay? If you're going to use failure, it has to be properly implemented. You can't have it sabotaging your total training volume, and you can't use it every single workout, especially on big compound exercises, okay? This is a really important thing to keep in mind. Because what's going to happen is you're going to sabotage what's up here for what's down here. And that's silly. Okay? I talk about that a lot with nutrition and diet and those sorts of things. So you never want to sabotage what's up here on your hierarchy of what's important for down here. So keep in mind, with volume, 1, it has to be appropriate progression. And 2, you can still implement failure, but you have to do it in an appropriate manner. Okay? If you are always having failure as an outcome goal, all right, you are going to get less volume, and it's going to cause your progress to stagnate. Okay, so that's it for this BioLayne video log on volume. Going to have some more stuff coming up in the future, and I'll talk to you guys then.